This is lesson 7.5. In this lesson, we're going to talk about factoring our polynomials. So writing a polynomial as a product of factors is called factoring. To factor x squared plus bx plus c as x plus p times x plus q, you need to find p and q such that p plus q equals b and p times q equals c. So when we're looking at this, if we're adding these two things together, they're going to equal that coefficient in front of x. And then when we multiply those two things together, they're going to equal c. And if you think about our FOIL method when we're multiplying, right, our first terms in our parentheses, we multiply those. But then when we do the outside and the inside, they both end up with that x variable to the same power, and we combine them together. And so that's where that bx comes in. And then when we multiply p times q, then we end up with that solution, which is where that c comes into play. So when we're looking at factoring these polynomials, first we want to look at, okay, what is b and what is c? So let's kind of give these some colors to really draw our attention. So we're going to use, for b, let's kind of label it up here. For b, we're going to use this color here. And you can use whatever colors you want. These are just the ones that I have that I'm using. So I'm using pink and green. So for b, it's pink, and for green, it's c. So I have 10 for b, and I have 16 for c. So when I go to factor these things, the first thing I need to think about is, okay, so is c a positive number or a negative number? Because that makes a difference when I'm figuring out those other factors. So I think about, okay, well, c is positive. So that means that we have to have two numbers with the same sign for p and q. Because when I multiply negative times a negative, it equals positive, or positive times a positive equals a positive as well. So then the second thing that we have to think about when we're looking at these numbers is what b's sign is. So if I'm looking here, b is also a positive number. So if b is positive, that means when I combine those two things with the same sign, they equaled a positive number. That means that both p and q, when I factor them out, are going to have to be positive numbers. Because if they were both negative, this would not give me a positive answer when I add them together. So thinking about that, the next thing that I have to do is figure out, well, what are my factors of c? So I want to look at what are the factors of c, because when I multiply them, they have to multiply to equal 16. So let's make a list. Example 1, we're looking at factors of 16. And in parentheses, I'm going to put that this is c so that we remember that that's the number that we were looking at. We didn't use our colors. All right, so if we think about what are the factors of 16, well, I've got 1 times 16 is 16. 2 times 8 is 16. And 4 times 4 is 16. So there are my factors of 16. Now, that takes care of c. But I also have to look at, okay, well, when I add those numbers, right, when I'm simplifying here and I'm adding those numbers together, that's going to equal b. So I'm looking for which of these factors are going to give me the sum that I'm looking for. So we're looking at the sum of the factors. And I'm going to put in here that it needs to equal 10 because b for this question is equal to 10. So I have 1 plus 16 and it gives me 17. 2 plus 8 gives me 10. 4 plus 4 gives me 8. So when I'm looking at what are the factors that are going to work for this, I'm looking for the ones that give me a sum of 10, and when I multiply them, they equal 16. So that would be this row right here. So that means when I go to set up my two binomials, in order for us to get this x squared, right? I know I'm multiplying x times x. So each binomial gets an x. We talked about how C is positive and B is positive. So when those are both positive, I know that I'm adding in both binomials. And now I just have to plug in these two factors that I found. So this is x plus 2 and x plus 8. Now we can go back and check to see, okay, well, does it work out? Well, x times x is x squared. There we go. Outside, 8 times x is 8x. Inside, 2 times x is 2x. 8x plus 2x is 10x. Last, 2 times 8 is 16, which is what we were looking for here. So when it asks me to factor, this is my final answer. X plus 2 times x plus 8. Now in example 2, we have a polynomial that is slightly different. So again, we're going to look at what C is. We're going to look at what B is. So this time, C is positive 12. So again, that means I have to multiply two numbers that have the same sign, either both positive or both negative. Because when I multiply, I'm going to get a positive with those two situations. And then I look at B, and I notice that B is negative 8. So if they have the same sign, I'm adding them together and it equals a negative number. Well, then in this case, it must mean that I'm dealing with two negative numbers for my factors. So again, we're going to make our list. So factors of, and this time we're doing 12. So factors of 12. Now I have to think about it because remember, again, they are the same sign. So this time when I'm looking at factors of 12, I'm thinking about negative 1 times negative 12, right? Negative times a negative will give us a positive. I'm thinking about negative 2 times negative 6 and negative 3 times negative 4. Now, when I go to figure out which factors are the best one for this, again, we're talking about our sum of factors. And this time, that has to be equal to negative 8. All right. So, negative 1 plus negative 12 is negative 13. Negative 2 plus negative 6 is negative 8. Negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7. So which of these sets of factors adds up to the negative 8 that I'm looking for? It's this negative 2 and negative 6. So again, I'm going to take a look here. We have x squared at the beginning. So I know that both of my binomials will have an x at the beginning. We talked about how they're both negative numbers so that they could equal that sum of negative 8. So I know I'm using subtraction in both binomials this time. And then I'm going to plug in my number. So this was negative 2 and negative 6. And again, you could use FOIL or one of your other methods from the past to re-multiply to make sure that you have used the right things in the right places. But also we have some instances where we have a third option for our signs. So for example 3, let's look at what we got here. We have negative 21 for C. So in order to get a negative number for C, I know that I'm going to have two different signs, right? I'm going to have a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive, because when I multiply them, that gives me a negative answer. So I know my signs will be different. And I also know that I have to get their sum to equal positive 4. So we're going to have to use perhaps different versions of the same numbers. Like before we just had, see up here, we had just -1, -12, right? Because they both had to be negative. But sometimes when they have to be one of each, we got to see, well, which option is our sum going to work the best for? So let's take a look at our factors. And this time our factors have to be for -21. So I have 1, so +1 and -21. I also could have -1 and +21. Those will still equal -21 when I multiply them. +3 times -7, that'll give me -21. Or -3 times +7. So looking at these, now I have to go on and figure out, okay, well, let's figure out which sum is going to work for us. So our sum of our factors, we're trying to equal +4 this time. All right, so 1 plus -21 gives us -20. -1 plus 21 gives us +20. +3 plus -7 is -4. And -3 plus +7 is +4. So if I'm looking for a sum of 4, the one that I want for this table is down here at the bottom. So -3 and +7. So when I put them in here, I know, because again, it just is x squared at the front. So I know each one gets an x. Now this time, depending on which number goes in which set of parentheses, that's the sign that we put in there. So I have -3 and I have +7. And in this case, it doesn't matter which one goes with which x because they both just have that plain old x at the front. So it doesn't matter if I do x plus 7 times x minus 3 because multiplication is commutative. The order doesn't matter. So as long as I have x minus 3 in one of my sets of parentheses and x plus 7 in the other set, then that's fine. So one thing that we can do to help us as we're going through looking at questions to help us really sort through, we're going to use this chart at the bottom here. So this is the general format without any numbers actually plugged in. If C is positive and B is positive, then P and Q are positive. Okay, so thinking about right here, this is where our P and our Q show up. If C is positive and B is negative, then we know that P and Q are both negative. And then if C is negative, then we know that P and Q are going to have different signs. So if C is negative, P and Q have different signs. And this will just kind of help you as a little flow chart as you're looking at questions, as you get more comfortable with these types of problems. And eventually it'll get to become second nature and you won't really need it anymore.